Hallo meine Freunde und herzlich willkommen zu My Name is You. Ich bin's wie immer, euer Neomir. Und ich sage ja immer, das ist ein Indie-Game, was ich auf Itch.io gefunden habe. Irgendein Spiel, kleines Spiel, was ich auf Steam gekauft habe. War kostenlos, war ein Bundle dabei. Aber bei diesem Spiel, ich habe durch meine Steam-Bibliothek geguckt und ich weiß ehrlich gesagt, ich weiß nicht mal, wo ich es her habe. Ich weiß nicht mal, wo ich es her habe. Dementsprechend weiß ich auch absolut nicht, worum es gehen soll. Ich dachte mir, ja, genau das, was ich als mein Content hier bezeichne. Also legen wir mal einfach los. Ich hoffe, euch geht's gut. Missing. Calm. Nikita Tiat. Ach, jetzt habe ich auch so auf die Maus geklickt. Liat. It may seem that
It
the
may
story...
seem that the story of you is chaotic. However, in reality, it is not. The more stories you pass through, the more likely you will be to piece it into one whole picture. Use every possible opportunity. The truth is somewhere close.
Okay, alles klar. Englisch, Voice on off, Sounds. Keine Steuerung. Okay.
I suppose I will start at the very beginning. Chapter 1.
Es ist mal ganz angenehm, dass jemand anderes die Texte vorliest. Just saying.
Once upon a time, there lived you. Despite his unusual name, his life was hardly any different from others. It was an unusually usual day when he was getting ready to go to work. 2 hours of sleep. What a formality, he said to himself, glancing at his watch. He was used to working at night, just as he was used to never having days off. That morning, the buttons on his shirt were fastened faster than usual. This was not by chance. The tear-off calendar boldly declared Friday, April 3rd. It reminded him that there were only 3 work days before his holiday, and there was no room for mistakes. His room in a communal apartment was not very big, so it did not take him long to pack. Having got dressed, he quietly walked past the neighbors' rooms into the hallway. Somebody was snoring loudly in the furthest room, which caused you to smile for some reason. He walked up to the front door and accidentally stepped on a pile of letters. Picking up the envelopes, he saw his name on one of them. You automatically put it in his pocket and walked out. The thought that next Sunday, a huge stone would be removed from the entrance to the crypt of his existence by the power of labor legislation kept you going.
So eine Art Spiel ist das. Cool. Wir lesen mal den Brief.
Glancing at the address line, a chill went through Yu's body for a split second. From Darina. Yu was confused by the seal on the envelope, indicating the place of departure, Novigrad. Is she really coming back to Kanot? Yu wondered. Dear Yu, my doctor's suspicions are confirmed. I have the same disease that struck you. I thought it over and decided that we need to break up. It may seem that things like that should bring people closer, but it would be unfair to myself. We can have our last date on the morning of April 3rd in the Seafront Cafe. And then I will leave Cannot and go abroad. He felt dizzy.
Wir arbeiten heute nicht.
Although you suffered from excessive hypochondria, he really had an incurable illness. He clearly remembered the day when he heard the diagnosis. Since that moment, he stopped counting new birthmarks on his body. He seemed shaken up after reading the letter, but not surprised. He tried to squeeze out a tear to see if he was still capable of showing emotions. Alas, he just welled up a little. You decided that it was because he had drunk a large amount of coffee, which dehydrated his already dried up body. Approaching the seafront, he tried to spot Darina. It did not take him long to find her. There she was, at the cafe table. She probably had no clue how much he appreciated her starting the conversation. Usually, you are late. I am tired. I hope you understand me. But he did not. Having overcome his anxiety, he squeezed out a handful of words.
Fragen Sie mal, ob sie bleibt.
Do not go away.
Sie will ja die Stadt verlassen.
Let's try once more. Too late. I have put up with my life for the sake of old age. Now, there will be no old age. There had always been a gap of misunderstanding between them. He had embraced his illness long ago and resignedly yielded to his ailment with a loud, "Make yourself at home." It seemed that he had become closer to his illness than to Darina. He got distracted thinking about himself and missed her meaning. Reflections on how to rebuild his life from the very beginning prevailed over the others. He was not ready to renew his relationship with himself, so he mentally grasped at the crumbles of the past seeping through his crucified palms. I am sorry. I have made my decision. I do not know why I arranged this meeting. She paid for the bill and left. You froze in place, at first not daring to say anything, and then resigned himself to the role of a scapegoat thrown into the unknown. For some reason, he saw something noble in their breakup. Yu was sure that he went to work immediately after the meeting. But when he came to his senses, he realized that he was on an unfamiliar street, cloaked by dusk. Despite the fact that the street seemed to be deserted, he felt someone's heavy presence. Turning to a rustle behind his back, Yu impaled his chest on a knife, squeezed in the hands of a long familiar figure. Greetings from the past. Whether from pain or surprise, Hugh could not utter a single word. The murderer carefully took out the blade and laid your motionless body on the ground. Blood flowed through the cold mosaic of paved stones. The corners of Hugh's mouth spread into a smile.
Also ich gehe mal davon aus, wir wurden jetzt ermordet und ich gehe mal davon aus, dass wir einfach die falschen Entscheidungen getroffen haben, weil hier steht ja Chapters. Darum gehe ich mal davon aus, dass wir mit den anderen Entscheidungen vielleicht weiterkommen. Zumindest werde ich es mal ausprobieren. Vielleicht ist das auch nur eine Demo. Wie gesagt, ich habe absolut keine Ahnung, wieso das Spiel bei Steam bei mir ist. Ich versuche einfach mal die anderen Wege und ich zeige es euch. So, ich mach mal Agree with Parting. Letztens hatten wir Ask her to stay. Mal sehen. Also wir erinnern uns, wir sind jetzt wieder beim Treffen mit Dilara am Café. Und sie möchte ja die Stadt verlassen. Wir sind nicht mehr Agree with Parting.
He seemed to be ready for such an outcome and did not hold a grudge against her. Nodding goodbye to her, you hurried to work. He was almost there when he saw his boss enter the office building. He took it as his personal failure, although his watch showed that he still had several minutes. Yu had barely got into the office when he noticed two male silhouettes behind him. He turned around and saw his boss and a man he had never seen before, a little further away. To avoid unnecessary explanations, Yu took a badge from his table and pointed to it. Yes, despite the fact that there was no live communication with clients, the work charter required to wear a name tag, probably to remember your name. Wow, that's a very unusual name. Nice to meet you. It is the only unusual detail of my life. An awkward pause hung in the air. The boss standing behind Frank frowned and cast a reproachful glance at you. Frank is our security guard starting today. Oh, we have nothing to. A security guard. Some of my important documents are missing. There are only two of us. What kind of documents? That I cannot tell you. You mean you suspect me? No, I do not. Eliminating any opportunity to continue the conversation, the boss turned around and went into his office. The room plunged into silence. Yu got down to some clerical work. Yu was sitting at his sturdy desk, imagining again and again how the shelves, stocked with books on jurisprudence, would break loose due to their own weight from friable concrete and break his head. Allowing himself a little break, Yu took his diary from his table drawer and made a note.
I never took a plate of soup at school lunches, even when I really wanted to. I was afraid to spill it in front of everyone, but I could put it on the table, which seems to be my life's pattern.
Feeling some satisfaction from writing that, he resumed work. There was a rustle of the janitor's broom and the trill of birds outside the window.
More accurate than the clock,
you thought. Chapter 2. On the second day of work, every sip of coffee came out of his nose as blood. Covering his nose with his hand, Yu went to the restroom. Excuse me, I wish I could narrate a little faster and keep you from getting bored, but it is difficult in my condition. Let's continue. Returning to his workplace, Yu saw Frank sitting at his table and leafing through his personal diary. Such violation of personal boundaries, it seemed, was about to put Yu out of temper.
Give it to me.
Here, take it. I was curious. In a moment, Yu hid his diary in the drawer of his desk. I am sorry if I offended you. The incident seemed to be over, but Frank's intrusive nature got the better of him. Can I ask you a question? Why does everyone in your notes die?
Warum stirbt jeder in unseren Notizen? Ich will's ja auch
Perhaps
wissen.
the lack of communication affected you. Unexpectedly for himself, he answered the question directly.
I'm not sure, but it seems to me that the desire to kill a self-protagonist in the text takes root in the desire to alienate the described situations from a real self.
You said it as if he had prepared an answer to this question a long time ago, or at least he had thought about it before. Silence set in. Frank was embarrassed by his answer and tried to look understanding.
Well, more likely that it is just easier to kill.
The office phone rang.
Gehen wir ans Telefon?
As soon as Yu came up to the phone, the ringing stopped. He barely returned to his desk when the phone rang again. As soon as Yu came up to the phone, the ringing stopped. He barely returned to his desk when the phone rang again.
Davon lassen wir uns nicht beeindrucken.
As soon as Yu came... He As soon... He barely...
Alles klar, wir ignorieren den Anruf.
The ringing bored into his skull. You was buzzing together with the receiver. You involuntarily took off, but his head started spinning, and he was seeing dark spots. Holding onto the railing, you slid down the stairs and jumped out onto the street. He ran into his boss at the door, who stood there smoking.
Go to bed now. You can give me the rest of the papers tomorrow.
He did not have any strength left to work anyway. Although he left some things in the office, you was not in a hurry to go back. He sat down on the doorstep to rest. His vision was not particularly keen on the second day, so it took him a while to recognize a familiar face. You livened a little. A welcoming grin appeared on his face.
Hi, Max. Why are you not at work?
I dismissed my students a little early. How are you feeling?
As usual, another night shift.
If I was your father, I would have fired you long ago.
What will you have left for me then?
Max answered with a question.
Do you want me to take your shift?
Ja, er kann ruhig unsere Schicht übernehmen.
They let me go. But there is still a lot of work to do.
Okay, I will talk to your father.
Don't you dare.
Max had a fit of grunting coughing, to Yu's surprise. Max tried to hide it very hard, but Yu noticed blood on his palms, which he quickly hid in his pocket. Yu decided to play along with his old friend, pretending that the latter had not given his secret away. Max tried to quietly wipe the traces of blood with a handkerchief, the corner of which was still visible from the pocket of his coat. The handkerchief was way too familiar. It was Darina's handkerchief. Yu said goodbye, refusing a favor, and went away. Coming home, Yu could barely stand on his feet. Notwithstanding his lack of sleep and fatigue, he could not fall asleep. The day flashed in his head on repeat. As for the breakup, he did not see himself as the victim. On the contrary, the entire time during his relationship with Darina, Yu wondered,
Why did she love him? Drained of all strength and weak in spirit from birth.
He did not anymore.
Was sehen wir denn hier auf dem Hintergrund? Zwei Hände? Hier liegt jemand.
Dizziness and pain subsided. At some point, he even thought about calling a doctor, just to make sure that he was still alive. But sleep took its toll. Chapter 3.
Das ist ein bisschen confusing, weil darum heißt das Spiel auch My Name is You. Unser Name ist You. Und manchmal ist der Text ein bisschen confusing, weil dann steht dann, also ihr seht's ja selbst. Weil wir heißen halt so, ne? Ich dachte manchmal, irgendwie stimmt doch da die Form nicht, aber wir heißen ja You. Er meint nicht You im Sinne von du, er meint You, dein Name You. Weiter geht's.
The alarm went off. You faced a new day with weakness in his legs and a throbbing headache. All night long, he had been haunted by a painfully familiar nightmare. However, when he woke up, all tangible images dissolved, only leaving a nasty precipitate.
Das ist zum Beispiel auch, er redet ja über uns, der Erzähler. Jetzt sagt er aber, er stand auf. Er hätte auch sagen können, when you woke up. Als you aufgewacht ist. Oder? Ja. Das ist ein bisschen, aber ist gut gemacht. Ist wirklich gut gemacht.
His body led him to the kitchen in search of caffeine. Despite the early hours, he found his boss there.
How are you feeling?
You heard the question, but ignored it because of his sleepy state.
How difficult is it to answer?
You was pleased to hear the words of concern, even coming that way.
I'm sorry, Father.
A cup in Yu's hand inevitably filled with bloody coffee.
You look like shit. I feel like it. I do not want to lose my last son, even someone like you.
His father had his old wool suit on and was about to leave for work.
You do not have to go to the office today. Get some rest.
Wenn Papa sagt, wir sollen uns ausruhen, und Papa ist auch gleichzeitig unser Chef, dann ruhen wir uns aus.
Okay, I will try.
Yu went to his room and sat down at his desk. He took a pen and then remembered that he left his diary at work. Yu took some letters out of the drawer, which had not been sent for some reason. He took one of the letters and added a few lines to it.
Remember when Grandfather made me listen to a rhythmic beat in the air? It is the heartbeat of a gigantic whale who swallowed our universe. And I believed him. What about you? You said it was just train wheels wobbling. So I decided that the whale had died a long time ago, which was better than it being just a fantasy. Do you understand? Asking you this is easy on paper because you will not answer me.
Adding those lines, he felt he had completed something important and allowed himself to take a nap. Once he dozed off, he heard a knock on the door. Any unexpected knock on the door or telephone call could evoke severe paranoia in you. Because the knock on your door is louder and more alarming than on any other door. In a moment, there was rustling of envelopes slipping into the mail slot of the front door.
Wir gehen mal zur Tür und gucken uns die Briefe an.
Once he got up, his sleepiness was gone. Sorting out a stack of utility bills, you found a letter addressed to him. It was a letter from the sanatorium where he had undergone treatment that summer.
Dear Mr. Yu, I am afraid I have to inform you that you were misdiagnosed due to a serious mistake on my part. Your disease has a closed form, and the possibility of airborne or droplet transmission is excluded. To put your heart at ease, you can follow the precautions recommended to you earlier. However, I assure you that your disease is only focused on you. Accept my sincerest apologies. Your attending physician, K.
It would mean little to a healthy person. But to you, the news turned everything upside down. The disease got quiet. That time it did not try to get out, having used you as a disposable case. It was snugly snoozing. You took a shower, washing away the fuss of the last days, and decided to go to work. You did not tell anyone about this, but I am going to tell you confidentially. He believed that the disease manifested itself most fiercely when he went to bed. That was why you did not like sleep. His night fantasies became crazier with time. Every dream seemed to him a step closer to insanity. In order to control himself, he regularly looked at his hands and at the clock hands. He walked out of the door and noticed a stranger near the opposite house. That stranger was an identical copy of you, as if his long-lost twin. You froze and watched him. The door was half open, and he saw a pretty girl and a little boy, probably the same age as the kid, behind it. The newly appeared copy of you smiled, said goodbye to his family, and disappeared. You decided to follow the imposter. He was filled with excitement and almost childish curiosity. Yu's assiduous attempts not to give himself away were unwarranted. His double had no intention of turning around. The pavement, the slums, the sound of the heartbeat of a whale. A straight path led them to the railway station. Suddenly, the second you turned back in the direction of the original, but the latter went unnoticed. The station was unusually empty. The double went to the counter and bought a ticket. You, without much hesitation, waited for a convenient moment and went up to the same window.
I would like the same ticket, the same time.
A heavy, apathetic cashier automatically held out the requested ticket without batting an eye. The ticket said 8 o'clock. The train was about to arrive. The double sat on a bench near the right track. You stayed at a distance, keeping an eye on him. He was so excited that the illness fell into the background. The train rattled in the distance. The double got up and walked to the edge of the platform. You came close to him, forgetting about precautions. Yes, he had decided to start a conversation. he was going to do it in the car, so that the double could not escape. Before you realized what was happening, the double threw himself under the moving train. You choked from horror. His feet seemed glued to the platform. Everything around him froze. In a moment, hysterical screams of eyewitnesses pierced the frozen air. How come he had not noticed them before?
Somebody was killed. He pushed him.
Get him! Train rattle squeezed out the last drops of sanity. Blurred silhouettes, impregnated with human justice, surrounded you. Is this the end? The alarm went off.
War das nur ein Traum? Also wir haben quasi einen Doppelgänger gesehen, der ist zum Bahnsteig gegangen. Er hat ein Ticket gekauft, wir haben das gleiche Ticket gekauft und dann hat er sich vor den Zug gestoßen und die Zeugen dachten, wir hätten ihn geschubst. War das nur ein Traum?
You faced a new day with weakness in his legs and a throbbing headache.
Oder haben nicht wir ihn geschubst?
All night long, he had been haunted by a painfully familiar nightmare. However, when he woke up, all tangible images dissolved, only leaving a nasty precipitate. His body led him to the kitchen in search of caffeine. Despite the early hours, he found his boss there.
Ach, jetzt geht wieder von vorne los. Ach so. Das Chapter beginnt von vorne.
How are you feeling?
He would walk through the park, or that patio, or the arch, by which he used to run so often.
Das ist neu. Hier hatten wir letztens den mysteriösen Mann gesehen, wo sich herausstellte, dass das unser Doppelgänger war.
All that in order to somehow distinguish between days. Otherwise, everything merged into one endless stream. He remembered that it was the last working day before the holiday when he came up to the office door. Entering the office, you noticed that Frank was not there. He grinned at that maliciously for some reason. He found a new batch of documents on his table. Pinning his name tag on his jacket, you got to work. The work did not take as much time on the last working day. He easily sorted out insurance files and, like a clerical deity, decided the client's fate, deciding who was to receive payments and who had mutilated himself with the purpose of deception. Having gone through most of the papers, he came across an extremely familiar storyline. Insurance form, life insurance, Form 42, fractures, serious illness, and death. Insurance does not cover self-inflicted injuries, self-inflicted infection, or suicide. Date of insurance, March 29th. Date of death, April 5th. Insurance sum, 203,500 coins. Salary, 15,000 coins. The client was an insurance agent. He bought a train ticket, later to be found under its wheels. Witness testimonies varied. According to some testimonies, he was pushed down onto the track. According to the other, he stumbled. Since the gap between the date of insurance and the date of death was so small, there was a note in the file indicating a suspected suicide. All risks were borne by the office that makes the final decision.
Also, wir müssen jetzt einen Versicherungsfall entweder bestätigen oder ablehnen, ob der Versicherte die Summe kriegt. Ich glaube, 200.000 Münzen waren das. Und die Sache ist, der hat sich gerade erst vor 6 Tagen, 29. März, 5. April, versichern lassen und ist jetzt gestorben. Lustig daran, das ist der Doppelgänger, den wir gesehen haben. Das ist jetzt Ich stelle mir jetzt die Frage, wenn ich jetzt annehme, wer denn die versicherte Summe kriegt. Vielleicht bekommen wir die ja, weil es unser Doppelgänger ist und wir das ja quasi mitgespielt haben und jetzt ist eine andere Route gekommen. Vielleicht ist das... Ich meine, wir haben ja gesehen, dass er raufgerannt ist, würde ich meinen. Er hat Selbstmord begangen. Also eigentlich müssten wir es ablehnen. Aber ich accepte trotzdem.
You confirmed the insurance payout to his metaphysical colleague. What guided him when making such a decision? Did it evoke his sense of justice, compassion, selfishness, or maybe shame? I am sorry. No, you do not have to answer. You completed his work earlier than planned. Satisfied, he carefully unfastened his name tag and put it in front of himself. A confusing question went through his head. What's next? It was Yu's first holiday, and it seemed he did not even plan what to do during the long-awaited vacation. He took his time to clean up his desk and went to his boss's office. He formally knocked a couple times on the door and appeared before his father.
Wir fragen mal ganz lieb, ob wir noch was machen müssen, bevor wir Urlaub haben.
Is there anything else I can do?
If you have processed the last papers, then you need to fill out the statements.
I already have.
Wait, has your holiday just started? Look at the time. It is the end of the workday. You can go. I dismiss you.
I will work some more.
As you wish. Take it easy on the coffee.
Yu took a folder with the statements and turned to leave. Fearing he might appear too soft, the father added,
I do not need a stroke here.
A satisfied smile flashed through Yu's face.
I know, Father.
Was burned twice, first inside a big penguin, then like a man.
Ich gehe mal nochmal rein. Ich lehne mal diesmal den letzten Versicherungsfall ab. Ich habe das Gefühl, dass hier noch mehr kommt. Und nicht, wir machen jetzt Urlaub und das war's. Irgendwie habe ich das Gefühl, irgendwas kommt hier noch. So, wir lehnen mal diesmal ab. Mal gucken, ob das irgendwas ändert.
Yu refused the insurance payout, figuring he had guessed the man's motives correctly. What guided him when making such a decision? Did it evoke his sense of justice, arrogance, selfishness, or maybe envy?
Also das ist jetzt schon wieder das Gleiche wie davor.
His desktop got empty, He completed his work earlier than planned. Yet, he was dissatisfied. He felt that he had missed something. Not knowing what to do with himself, he went to his boss's office. He politely knocked a couple times on the door and appeared before his father.
Hat es keinen Einfluss, ob wir das ablehnen oder nicht? Scheint nicht so.
Can I go? I have processed all the papers.
Taking the question as insolence, his father glanced at the calendar, then at the clock.
You are dismissed.
Not quite realizing what to do next, you paused to think.
You can go.
Picking up his things, you left the office. Was he really on holiday?
Ist ein anderes Ende.
As soon as he stepped over the threshold, he felt unwell. His chest rattled like a moving train.
Die Musik kommt wirklich vom Spiel.
Open my eyes and can be able to see. It seems that my head aches just now, lets me be free. So I can open my eyes and can be able to see. It seems that my head aches just now, lets me be free. So I can open my eyes and can be able to see. It seems like I revive, like I completely healthy. But there is no pill from migraine, no one give you guarantee. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I found a pill. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine cause I don't know sick. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I hope it gets you. I'm fine cause I found a pill, and I'm fine.
Das ist irgendwie nicht so ganz satisfying. Das ist irgendwie nicht so ganz satisfying. As if we would miss something.
Chapter 3.
Something. Just a small piece.
The alarm went off.
So, wir schlafen mal hier einfach weiter und gehen nicht an die Tür. Da bekommen wir ja den Brief von unserem Arzt.
It seemed to him that he had been tossing about in his bed, trying to
Musik
fall
ändert sich
asleep for
sofort.
several hours. He stayed awake, so he decided to glance through the delivered letters. He had already learned to enjoy his rubbery legs and dizziness. Looking through the stack of utility bills, you found the letter addressed to him.
So, also das scheint es...
It was a letter from the sanatorium where he had undergone treatment that summer.
Dear Mr. Yu, I am afraid I have to inform you that you were misdiagnosed due to a serious mistake on my part. An unfortunate confusion of the
Okay, das
documents
kennen wir ja schon. Mal sehen,
led me
ob sich
to
was
make the wrong
ändert.
diagnosis.
His legs gave way under him, not because of weakness, but because of a sudden boost of energy.
Das ist neu.
His heart pounded with the strength of a whale, but with the speed of a shrew. He laid down on the bed, unable to withstand a rush of emotion. With an unusual smile on his face, he was staring at the ceiling. After a few minutes, he asked with horror,
A new chandelier?
Raise your shoulders to the wind, man. They are at your feet. You have done your duty. That will not forgive you. Open up your curtains. will not hurt you.
Okay. Dann gucken wir uns mal jetzt den Pfad an, was passiert, wenn wir gar nicht erst nach Hause gehen zum Schlafen, zum Ausruhen, sondern gleich auf Arbeit bleiben. So, dann gehen wir mal zur Arbeit.
You did not tell anyone about this, but I am going to tell you confidentially. He believed that the disease manifested itself most fiercely when he went to bed. That was why you did not like sleep.
Also jetzt wissen wir wirklich nichts, also wir wissen nichts
His
von dem
night
Brief, von dem
fantasies became
Arzt.
crazier with time. Every dream seemed to him a step closer to insanity. In order to control himself, he regularly looked at his hands and at the clock hand. You liked to alter his route to work every now and then. He would walk through the park, or that patio, or the arch, by which he used to run so often.
Okay, das ist bis jetzt das Gleiche. Ich gucke mal, ob sich was ändert.
Can I go now? The father glanced first at the calendar, then at the clock. It took him a while to realize why his son was asking him that. Yes, you are dismissed.
Leicht veränderter Text, würde ich meinen.
There was an awkward pause between the family members. To break the silence, you mumbled,
If there is nothing else I can do,
"You can go." Okay. You picked up his things, unable to shake off the feeling that he was awkwardly saying goodbye to his workplace. Leaving the office, you noticed a suspiciously familiar face of a person coming out of the opposite building. He was Yu's identical double.
Der Doppelgänger schon wieder.
A sensation of déjà vu continued. It lasted until his double noticed him, wiping a smile off his face.
Perhaps I look timid. I have two deep set eyes. I don't know what to do. I'll they beat the drums.
Kam das jetzt so, weil ich es angenommen habe
Around me the pale youngsters.
und einfach gesagt habe, I can go, oder weil ich jetzt nicht vorher nach Hause gegangen bin?
I want to show that I'm not
Was genau hat das jetzt ausgelöst? Wir machen weiter in Chapter 2. Mal sehen, ob wir da noch irgendwas anderes machen können.
You gripped his diary and unexpectedly for himself, pushed Frank to the wall, knocking a chair out from under him. The shelves above Yu's desk shook and fell on Frank, lying in a fetal position, covering his head with his hands. You did not hear the sound of the shelves falling. There was nothing but inner noise in his head. Engulfed with righteous anger, you stood over the defeated guard. The holes from the missing parquet boards under his head were slowly filled with crimson stream.
This town you are. Oh, I was lost. It was the night when you buried him. When death comes dressed, not knowing Christ. And possibly sit out even
Give it to me. Here, take it. I was curious. The handkerchief was way too familiar. It was Darina's handkerchief.
Wir fragen diesmal nach diesem Tuch, was er da in der Tasche hat. Habe ich das beim letzten Mal? Ich frage diesmal nach.
What was that?
What do you mean? I have a cold. There have been droughts in my classroom for 3 days.
Yu looked at his own hands, counting his fingers. Boring, but quite expected. They were all there. He was clearly weaker than his friend was, but, having lost control of himself, he grabbed Max by the front of his shirt, which led to a clumsy brawl.
Max pushed Yu against his shoulder in an attempt to break away. Because of an insult or uneven stones on the pavement, Yu lost his balance and fell down, hitting the curb with the back of his head. As if examining a painting, Yu fixed his dying look on his fingers and counted them. He counted them again and again.
Das war also das Taschentuch von der Freundin. Und wir haben jetzt unseren Kumpel Max damit konfrontiert. Lief jetzt nicht so gut für uns. Wir haben uns den Hinterkopf aufgeschlagen und sind gestorben. Wieder einmal. Hätte besser laufen können.
As soon he bar- as soon he bar- as soon as he barely returned to his as soon he bar- Where was I?
Ich habe jetzt einige Male angeklickt, das Telefon zu ignorieren, und jetzt kam ein anderer Dialog, so nach 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Mal gefühlt.
I will have to start again. Once upon a time, there lived Yu. Despite his unusual name, his life was hardly any different from
Game
others.
broken. Wir sind wieder in Chapter 1. Weil ich einfach zu oft nicht ans Telefon gegangen bin. Ich dachte mir, es kann doch nicht sein, dass ich da einfach die Auswahl habe, über ans Telefon zu gehen oder nicht ans Telefon zu gehen. Und immer wenn ich rangehen will, ist keiner dran. Und sobald ich wieder an meinem Platz bin, klingelt es wieder. Jetzt habe ich so oft drauf gedrückt. Jetzt kam wirklich mal was anderes. Cool. I like.
It wasn't
So, wir gehen zur Arbeit.
The trip to work took him by several blocks. He considered early morning to be an extremely pleasant time of day. Universal euphoria. Although, euphoria usually precedes inevitable death. As soon as he went into the park, he saw a kid in ragged clothes running away from a pack of stray dogs. His eyes caught a swiftly ticking clock hand.
Wir helfen mal dem Kind. Welches von...
Even though Yu had been scared of dogs since childhood, he was going to run to the kid's aid. But the latter stumbled and fell down on the pavement, and the dogs lost all interest in him. Yu had nothing to do with the outcome of events, but he was filled with pride for his desire to help the boy that he did not even know. It made him come up to the kid, who was sitting on the ground with a bloody knee and a toothless smile, not because of the fall, but due to his age. Yu was about to give the kid a handkerchief with his initials on it when he noticed it had fresh traces of his own blood. So he just asked,
Can I do something for you?
Thank you, sir. I am okay. They did not mean to hurt me.
At that moment, Yu saw his boss in the distance and hurried to work, shouting a quick,
Be careful.
over his shoulder. On the way to the office, the thought about how strange it felt to be addressed as Sir bounced around in his head. Although he had passed a 30-year-old milestone, he felt closer to the kid with a bloody knee than to sirs of any kind, even the least important of them. Yu went up 3 flights of stairs and found himself on the top floor. It was the office of the insurance company where he worked. The door was unlocked. Was he late? He tried to walk in, but was stopped by a stranger. Wait! What are you doing? Before Yu could give a proper response to the cad, his boss came up the stairs, struggling to catch his breath, and did it himself.
Let him in.
They both entered the office, and the boss walked Yu to his desk, where he explained the situation to him in private.
That is Frank, my distant relative. He needs to do an internship, so he is going to work here for a while.
As who?
As a security guard.
To avoid
Okay.
any further questions, the boss turned around and went to his office.
Den Teil kennen wir ja schon.
An internship as a security guard in an insurance company, fitting in 2 rooms. Ridiculous. If I was blessed with a writing talent, I would definitely immortalize this.
Yu thought. Yu got down to some clerical work. Yu found a moment and took the morning letter out of his pocket. Glancing at the address line, a chill went through Yu's body for a split second. From Dorina. Yu was confused by the seal on the envelope, indicating the place of departure. No leaf grad.
Is she coming back to Kenot?
He said out loud. Suddenly, there was a curious voice saying, "Who is coming?" Yu did not answer and continued reading. Dear Yu, my doctor's suspicions are confirmed. I have the same disease that struck you. I thought it over and decided that we need to break up. It may seem that something like this should bring people closer together, but it would be unfair to myself. We can have our last date on the morning of April 3rd in the Seafront Cafe, and then I will leave Kenot and go abroad. He felt dizzy.
Ich meine, wir sind ja jetzt schon auf Arbeit. Wir können trotzdem noch zum Café gehen. Sind wir dann... Ich gehe mal jetzt zum Café.
You hurried to the cafe. It is uncertain whether he actually wanted to find her there or hoped for the opposite. One way or another, when he was in the appointed place, Dorina was not there.
Sie war nicht mehr da.
All emotions left you in an instant. He saw the kid on the porch of the cafe veranda. The kid was looking at him, squinting in an odd way.
Why are you squinting?
I am not. I closed my eye on purpose. Go ahead. Close one eye.
You covered his eye with his hand to humor the kid.
Feels strange. Do not open. I did it to remember about the mercy that life bestows on us. You get used to having just one eye, and then it turns out you have another. Or here's another thing. Hold your breath.
Got no will to carry on.
Weisheiten eines Kindes.
How pathway ended up.
Ich frage mich gerade, ob die Sachen, die wir...
We don't share the same dreams anymore, but we're still afraid.
Ich frage mich gerade, ob die Sachen, die wir machen, in einem Chapter auch Auswirkungen auf die anderen Chapter haben, aber ich glaube fast nein. Aber ich weiß es nicht. Ich helfe mal diesmal nicht dem Kind.
It was unclear what had made you so anxious. Fear of dogs, or of being late to work. He distanced himself from reality, refused to play any role except that of an outside observer. However, he had had no chance to interfere. The picture of the kid falling down on the ground, breaking skin on his knees, flashed before his eyes. Then of the dogs, losing all interest in him after that. You immediately felt nauseous. Everything went dark, and it seemed to him that he was looking at himself through the eyes of the kid, just like when he was a child. Deja vu! In order to justify his actions to himself, he took the handkerchief with his initials and handed it to the kid. Before the latter could say anything, you ran away to avoid further conversation. In a hurry, he went in the wrong direction, unaware of it until he ran into a locked gate on his way. He casually turned around and went to work. He was almost there when he saw his boss enter the office building. He took it as his personal failure, although his watch showed that he still had several minutes. You barely got into the office when he noticed two male silhouettes behind him. He turned around to see his boss and a man he had never seen before, a little further away. Figuring that they would have to be introduced to each other, he turned to the stranger first.
Let me introduce myself. You.
My name is Frank.
And you?
To avoid unnecessary explanations, you took a name tag from his table and pointed to it. Yes, despite the fact that there was no live communication with clients, the work charter required name tags, probably to remember his name. Wow, that's a very unusual name. Nice to meet you.
It is the only unusual detail of my life.
An awkward pause hung in the air. The boss, standing behind Frank, frowned and cast a reproachful glance at you.
Frank is our security guard starting today.
Ich gehe mal jetzt zum Café, nachdem ich dem Jungen nicht geholfen habe.
You hurried to the cafe. It is uncertain whether he actually wanted to find her there or hoped for the opposite. One way or another, when he was in the appointed place, Dorina was not there. However, he saw a familiar kid on the porch of the cafe's veranda. His injured knee was bandaged with a similar handkerchief with Yu's initials on it. Yu's mind was clouded. The kid handed you his own handkerchief.
What for? Keep it.
Your nose is bleeding. The kid occupied himself with a scab on his knee.
Okay, ist wirklich ein anderes Ende. Das Kind hat uns jetzt einfach
A game of words.
das Tuch wiedergebracht, wo unsere Nase blutet.
The first will
Aber da ist doch noch was. Da ist doch noch was. Oder? Oder? Ich habe jetzt den Brief gelesen und gehe mal zur Arbeit und gehe nicht zum Café.
The trip to work took him by a few blocks, but the road seemed endless that way. Though Yu suffered from excessive hypochondria, he really had an incurable disease. He clearly remembered that day when he heard the diagnosis. Since that moment, he stopped counting new birthmarks on his body. As soon as he reached the park, he saw a pack of street dogs rushing towards him. Deja vu! Yu's heart dropped. Time stood still.
Okay, das ist neu. Diesmal rennen die Hunde auf uns zu und rennen nicht dem Kind hinterher. Wir können stehen bleiben oder wegrennen. Bleib mal stehen.
Wishing to regain control of the situation, Yu froze in place in an attempt to suppress fear. Taking it for insolence, the mongrels became even angrier. Without slowing down, one of the dogs jumped and grabbed your throat. The barking slowly died down. His father yielded a piercing shout. Silence.
Der Hund ist uns an die Kehle gesprungen. Was soll diese Musik immer am Ende? War da keine andere Musik da? Die ist ein bisschen... Passt nicht so ganz. Just saying. So, dann versuchen wir direkt mal das andere wegzurennen von den Hunden. So, wir rennen weg.
You tried to run away, but he barely took a couple of steps and stumbled, falling flat on the ground. As soon as he stretched out on the pavement, the dogs lost all interest in him. Everything that happened seemed to him insanely familiar, bringing back his childhood memories. Holding onto his neck and feeling old scars against his palm, Yu looked at his ragged suit. His head was buzzing from pain. Glancing at his watch, he wondered if it was appropriate to go to work looking like that.
Das ist jetzt... Ich gehe mal nach Hause.
Yu thought that he could not appear at work looking like that and decided to change his clothes. Feeling like a little child who had fallen in a puddle, he was going home. The darn soup had spilled. He ran into his boss on his way home. His message was short. "You're fired." He was too weak to protest.
Okay, wir sind gefeuert.
You could not get rid of the thought. Why would the boss do it? The shelves were piled with documents waiting to be dealt with, and it would be hard to find a replacement. everything seemed like a bad dream. His head was ringing with pain.
Okay, wir sind gefeuert. Die Musik ist so verdammt laut, Mann. Wir wurden also gefeuert. Ich gehe mal diesmal verschmutzt zur Arbeit. Gucken, was da passiert. So, wir gehen mal verschmutzt zur Arbeit.
You barely caught into the office when two male silhouettes appeared behind him. He turned around and saw his boss and a man he had never seen before, a little farther away. The boss frowned and cast a reproachful glance at you. Figuring they would have to introduce each other, Yu quickly took off his ragged jacket, hung it on the back of his chair, and extended his hand to the stranger.
Let me introduce myself. You. You suspect me?
No, I do not. Clean yourself up. What is wrong with your hands? Eliminating any opportunity to continue this conversation, the boss turned around and went into his office. Chapter 2.
Das hat jetzt keine Großveränderung mit sich gebracht. Der Vater meinte nur irgendwann, ja, aber er wascht doch mal deine Hände, das war's.
Chapter 3.
Is there anything else to do?
If you have processed the final papers, then you need to fill out the statements.
Yes, I have.
Wait, has your...
I would like to help.
Look at you. You could use some help yourself.
Maybe this will help.
He mumbled to himself, picking up a folder with the statements and walking out.
Das war neu, glaube ich. Nicht so laut sein. Weil wir quasi nicht geschlafen haben, für die Firma den Dings abgelehnt haben und dann noch gefragt haben, ob wir weiterarbeiten können, ob wir noch was machen können. Meinte der Vater, ja, helft dir selber, guck dich mal an. Und das war eine weitere Errungenschaft und ich glaube, damit habe ich alle Errungenschaft laut Steam. Und warum bin ich hier immer schwarz? Ich weiß nicht, wieso die Kamera das macht. Ja, das ist wirklich ein bisschen nervig manchmal. Das nervt mich selbst enorm. Ich muss mir wahrscheinlich doch den Greenscreen wieder anhängen, damit die Kamera besser unterscheiden kann, was Hintergrund ist und was nicht. Wahrscheinlich, weil meine Couch auch grau ist. Dahinter ist das eine Couch, die ist auch grau. Wahrscheinlich blendet er das, denkt er, weiß ja nicht genau, wo der Übergang ist. Naja, wie dem auch sei. Was halte ich von dem Spiel? Ja, da ich nicht weiß, wo es herkommt und nicht weiß, wieso ich es habe, denke ich mal auch nicht, dass ich jemals dafür Geld bezahlt habe. Sag mal, die Geschichte ist okay, gut. Was ich gut finde, ist, dass verschiedene Einflüsse, hier gibt es so eine Art Zeitstrang auch innerhalb eines Chapters, zum Beispiel, wo wir jetzt am Anfang Chapter 1 wenn wir erst den Brief lesen und dann zur Arbeit gehen, ist das mit dem Kind ja quasi schon passiert. Die Hunde sind schon wieder vom Kind weg und wir kommen dann erst vorbei, darum gehen die Hunde dann auf uns los. Wenn wir sofort zur Arbeit gehen und den Brief nicht lesen, sind wir ein bisschen früher da und sehen noch die Hunde, wie sie dem Kind hinterherrennen. Das ist ziemlich gut gemacht mit diesen kleinen, feinen Zeitsträngen, die dann ineinander übergehen. Aber ich finde die Geschichte an sich, muss ich sagen, Zum Beispiel mit dem Max im Chapter 2, wo er dann dieses Taschentuch hat von der, wie hieß sie, die Lara. Und wir können ihn damit konfrontieren, stoßen uns aber den Hinterkopf und das ist es. Das ist ein bisschen, da hätte ich mir mehr gewünscht, so dass man vielleicht auf die Lara am Anfang, diesen Brief, dass da irgendwie vielleicht zum Ende das irgendwie darauf hinausläuft, dass man damit irgendwas wieder hat. Irgendwie so eine Art Rahmenhandlung um das ganze Geschehen. Hätte ich besser gefunden als diese Chapter, die mehr oder weniger, klar, irgendwie ja schon zusammenhängen, aber irgendwie auch wieder nicht. Also, es ist nicht so eine durchgehende, saubere Geschichte. Das mit den Doppelgängern, ja, okay. War dann wiederum ganz lustig, als man dann diesen versicherten Fall gelesen hat, von der Geschichte, die vorher passiert ist. Ich bin zu diesem Strang auch nicht mehr hingekommen. Mit dem Doppelgänger. Es war wirklich einmalig, dass diese Geschichte mit dem Doppelgänger am Zug kam. Egal, wie oft ich es probiert habe, da nochmal hinzukommen. Das kam nicht mehr. Vielleicht hängen die Chapter doch miteinander zusammen und ich hätte im Chapter davor schon was anders machen sollen. Um da wieder zu landen, das kann ja sein, das weiß ich jetzt nicht. Aber alles in allem, sage ich mal, es ist okay. Es ist okay. Was mich noch gestört hat, ist, ich habe ja jetzt wirklich versucht, hier alle Enden noch zu kriegen, um wirklich alle Dialoge, Monologe, Geschichten, Texte mir freizuschalten und euch zeigen zu können. Und man kann es wirklich nicht schnell vorspulen. Das muss ich einfach mal sagen. Ich kann jetzt nicht einfach die ganze Zeit die linke Maustaste smashen und dann bin ich dann gleich da, wo ich hin will. Das dauert dann pro Textseite, die lädt, vielleicht, auch wenn es nur 3 Sekunden sind, 4, 5, sitze ich an dem Ganzen jetzt schon bestimmt locker 3, 4 Stunden. Locker. Aber das ist einfach zu lang, weil ich immer wieder hin will und das dauert. Ich würde viel lieber so und da, wo ich was auswählen kann, macht es halt einen Stopp, weil ich was auswählen muss. Wäre schneller gewesen, um die Enden rauszufinden, weil niemand hat Lust, sich die Geschichte. Nun kann man ja die Geschichte finden, wie man will, aber niemand hat Lust, die Geschichte sich 10-mal anzuhören. Die Unterschiede will man hören. Ich will nicht dasselbe 10-mal hören, nur um dann irgendwas zu machen, wo sich dann gar nichts ändert. Vielleicht. Oder ich will auch nicht 10-mal das Gleiche hören, bis zu dem Punkt, wo sich was ändert. Ich kenne die Geschichte bis zu dem Punkt, wo sich was ändert. Ich will sie nicht nochmal hören. Ich will bis zu diesem Punkt, wo ich was ändern kann, vorspulen können. Versteht ihr, was ich meine? Naja, wie dem auch sei. Ich hoffe, euch hat es gefallen. Ich fand's alles in allem. Wie gesagt, die Geschichte fand ich jetzt nicht, der Burner war jetzt auch nicht wirklich Horror, weil irgendwas in der Spielebeschreibung stand, irgendwas mit einem Horror, mit einer Horrorgeschichte. Sehe ich jetzt hier nicht. Es war okay. Was ich gut fand, war, dass das Englisch wirklich leicht verständlich war. Leichtverständlicher Satzbau. Kein altenglisches Vokabular aus irgendwelchen Romeo und Julia Büchern, wo man die Wörter nicht versteht. Wirklich leicht verständliches Englisch fand ich gut. Die Musik nach den Enden war viel zu laut, hat auch nicht gepasst, weiß ich nicht wieso. Wenn ich das Spiel bewerten müsste, auf einer Skala von 1 bis 10, wobei 10 das Beste ist, ich sag mal, mehr als eine 5 ist es leider nicht. Dafür war es dann doch zu unkreativ. Wobei ich die Idee mit solchen Geschichten finde ich ganz gut. Das werde ich mir vielleicht öfters mal angucken. Ich fand auch extrem angenehm, dass er die ganze Zeit gelesen hat und ich nicht immer lesen muss. Just saying. Das ist halt angenehmer, wenn man mal auch einfach zuhören kann. Ja. Ich hoffe, euch konnte ich trotzdem ein bisschen die Zeit damit vertreiben, weil euch hat es irgendwie gefallen, aber einmal durchgucken reicht. Reicht mir auch. Das Spiel werde ich nie wieder anfassen in meinem Leben. Ist so. Bis dahin, euer Neomir.